This episode is sponsored by Trainwell, formerly Copilot. I'll talk about that later in the video. Hello, brains and hearts. I know a lot of the people watching this channel are here to support somebody that they care about who has ADHD, maybe an employee with ADHD. So this video, I wanted to share 3 of the most powerful questions I've ever been asked by a manager that were incredibly helpful for me. And maybe they'll be helpful for you as well. People with ADHD get a lot of judgment. I think from the outside, it can look like we're not trying, or it can look like we're being intentionally difficult, when a lot of times it's just that we are struggling. So one of the most important things I think you can do if you are working with somebody with ADHD is ask them what's going on, right? Once upon a time, I was a server at a restaurant, and I was really good at my job for the most part. I was really fast. I cared a lot about doing a good job. I got a lot of compliments. I got to the point where at this one restaurant that I was working at, I was trusted to be a closer. If you've never waited tables before, a closer is somebody who closes down the restaurant. They have to be a very strong server because they have to be able to take whoever comes in at the end of the night after all the other servers are cut. If you get a sudden unexpected rush, you have to be able to handle a lot of tables. And I could. I was really good. I was really fast. But the problem with being a closer is I was the last person to shut down the restaurant, me and maybe one other person. And so at the end of the night, I would sit down to do my paperwork, and I would take forever. It looked like from the outside to a lot of the managers that I was milking the clock, that I was taking my time intentionally so that I could get paid more money, so that maybe I could go into overtime and get that overtime bonus or whatever. I was not milking the clock, but I'm sure that's what it looked like. But I had one manager finally watch me struggle one night with this explosion of paperwork that I was trying to collect and staple and figure out what goes where and do all the calculations. And there's math involved, there's organization involved, there's a lot involved that is not necessarily the easiest thing in the world for ADHD brains. And she sat down next to me and looked at this explosion of chaos that was my server book and said, "What's going on?" I almost cried. I looked at her and said, "Everything's so disorganized, and I'm trying my best. I'm trying to go my fastest, but I'm tired. It's the end of the night. My meds have worn off, and I'm struggling." I had less energy than when I was doing the rest of my shift, and this was the hardest part of my shift. It was rough. Sometimes I had to make coffee for myself at 1 in the morning just to be able to get through it. But what I said to her was, there's a lot of paperwork. I struggle with this. I'm having a hard time getting through it. It's just taking me a while to get it all organized. And she looked at me and she asked me the second most powerful question I think you can ask somebody with ADHD, which is, would insert solution here help? Not, well, why don't you do this? But would this help? And what she suggested was, would organizing your paperwork as you go throughout the shift help? Real quick, before I get to the rest of the story, I can't overstate the importance of having support toward your goals when you have ADHD. Having someone ask the right questions and help you problem solve. I just had a baby, and it's been really tough to figure out how to fit in any sort of workout. I almost gave up on it entirely. Thankfully, my fitness coach through Trainwell has been there and was able to help me problem solve. If you remember me talking about Copilot in past episodes, they just changed their name to Trainwell to better underscore their commitment to human-led personal training. Nothing else has changed. It's the same great personalized coaching service. With Trainwell, you're paired up with a fitness coach who plans your workouts for you step by step based on your fitness goals and the equipment you have available. My coach has supported me all through trying to get pregnant, the pregnancy, and now postpartum. When I felt ready to work out again, we did a video call to talk about what my current goals are and what kind of workouts I even wanted to do. It's been tough, but she kept checking in on me, and because she asked such good questions and listened to my answers, eventually we were able to find a routine that worked. Mini workouts while my baby is doing tummy time, because I really like the idea of being able to work out while my baby works out, but she can only handle 3 to 5 minutes at a time right now. And a full strength workout I can do while wearing my baby, which was game changing for me. She's super chill. I'm able to get the exercise my brain and body need. Amazing. Not that that would work for everyone, but that's kind of the point. Nothing works for everyone. That's why having a coach is so helpful. Someone to tailor your fitness program to you and check in on you and help you problem solve. If you'd like to give it a try, click my Trainwell, formerly Copilot link. go.trainwell.net/howtoADHD to get 14 days free with your own personal trainer. And now back to my baby. The video. Back to the video. And she looked at me and she asked me the second most powerful question I think you can ask somebody with ADHD, which is, would insert solution here help? And what she suggested was, would organizing your paperwork as you go throughout the shift help? And I almost said yes, because obviously it would help. Obviously, at the end of the night, if I didn't have so much chaotic paperwork everywhere, if some of it was already stapled, if some of it was already organized, ideally, if all of it was already really well organized, yeah, obviously it would help. It would make the end of the night closing paperwork go a lot smoother. And so I almost said yes. And then I looked at her and I realized she meant it. And I looked at her and I said, yeah, it would help. But the problem is I can't do that, because in the middle of my shift, I would have had to go all the way to the back line, which is where the staplers were and all the organizational tools, the staplers and the paper clips and all of that. And my section as a closer was right at the front of the restaurant. So I would have had to go back through the entire restaurant and navigate all the people asking me for catch-up or asking me if they've seen my server or asking if they can order. I would have had to navigate through all of that. And any of that could have derailed me from what I was trying to do with my own tables. And so it wasn't really a realistic thing for me, maybe for other servers, but not for me, because I would have gotten distracted or I would have gotten overwhelmed. So, part of my own self-accommodation was, I'm at the front of the restaurant, I'm gonna use only this terminal at the front of the restaurant unless I have to go to the back for something, because then I can stay focused on my section. And so she looked at me and she asked the third most powerful question: what would help? And I think there are a lot of times we may not know the answer to that, but often we do, and we're just not asked the right question. We're not asked what would help. We're just told what should help, and then we try to make it work. But she asked what would help. And after identifying why the other thing wouldn't help, I was able to think about why it wouldn't help and what might help. Staplers. More staplers. So instead of all of the staplers being at this back line where I had to navigate this whole restaurant to get to them, if there was a stapler at every station that I might put an order in at, specifically the one that was closest to me, if there were staplers there, then I might be able to do it. Not always. I still might be in a hurry sometimes. I still might forget sometimes, but at least it would be possible, right? The stapler would be at the point of performance. The stapler would be where I needed it when I needed to use it. And I've talked about the point of performance in other videos, house hack videos. It's just a really important thing for a lot of people with ADHD, including me. But I said staplers. If there were staplers at every station, and she said, okay. I don't know, a week or two later, suddenly there were staplers at every station in the restaurant, and I was able to staple things as I went. Not always, not perfectly, but at the end of the night, there was a lot less paperwork to go through and organize. A lot of it was already organized, and I was able to get my paperwork done faster, which not only benefited me, it also benefited the manager, who was able to get out of the restaurant and go home sooner because she didn't have to wait for me to do my paperwork for quite so long before she could start hers. It also benefited the other managers who didn't have to wait that long for me. But it also benefited the other servers, because I wasn't the only one who was having trouble managing my paperwork throughout my shift. I was just the one that spoke up about it. So these three questions, asking these three questions, cost the restaurant the amount of, I don't know, however much staplers cost, maybe $20 for a few staplers. But it saved that restaurant so much money, and it saved me so much stress, and it saved the managers their evenings probably. The point is, accommodations can be really powerful, and universal design is a thing. If it's something that makes the environment more accessible to somebody with ADHD, it's gonna make it more accessible to other people too. And even the people who aren't having accessibility issues, it's still gonna be helpful for them. It's still gonna be faster for them. A lot of times people are afraid to ask for accommodations, or managers can be afraid to ask an employee what they might need. But a lot of the time, accommodations for ADHD are so inexpensive compared to the benefits. So again, 3 questions: what's going on? And let them explain it to you and trust their answer, because what you think is going on might not be what's going on. It looked like I was milking the clock. That is not what was going on. Would insert suggestion here help? And if not, what would? And the key is listening for the answer. It's not just the questions themselves, it's the fact that she was genuinely curious. I could tell she actually wanted to know. She wasn't there to judge me. She wasn't there to fix me. She was there because she was genuinely asking, would this help? No? Okay, what would? That curiosity allowed me to answer honestly. If we want, we can do the same for ourselves, right? When we're struggling, we just take a minute to pause and ask ourselves what's going on. And then if an idea comes up that might help, would this help? And then think through it, like actually listen to ourselves, because a lot of times we have internalized ableism, we have ideas of what should work. So actually taking the time to listen to ourselves, if we're like, hey, would this work? This suggestion that I've gotten a million times from other people, like, would this work? Wait for the answer. Because I feel like a lot of times our brain is like, no, it wouldn't, but like we don't take the time to actually listen to the response. We're just like, okay, yeah, that would work. Like, we should do that. And then if not, what would? I kind of want to start a hashtag, like, what's your stapler? What's the thing that would be helpful for you that might not cost that much, that might not be that big of a lift to do, but would make a huge difference for you, or would make a huge difference for one of your employees? And I don't think that you can answer the question, what's your stapler, without asking the other questions. You can't know what the solution is without knowing what the challenge is. And by the way, sometimes people are going to know what might help, and sometimes they're not going to know. I've asked these questions of other people in my life, and sometimes the answer is, I don't know. I don't know what would help. If that's the answer, there's a great website called askjan.org where you can go and look up by disability what the challenges are and what accommodations might help. And you can go through those accommodations with somebody or with yourself and see if any of those seem like they might be a good fit. And they might not, right? It's a bit of a process of trial and error. You're like, okay, this might help. Let's try it. Let's see if it does. And if it does, we say great, or iterate on it to make it help even more. Or if it doesn't help at all, then maybe we look at something else that might help. It's not necessarily always going to be an easy, perfect solution. And somebody might not even have the answers to these questions, but they are good questions to ask. And then if they need help getting to the answer, then there are ways to help. Ask Jan also has a really great chat feature or a phone number that you can call and ask them as well. Thank you again to TrainWell for sponsoring this video. If you'd like to give it a try, click my TrainWell, formerly Copilot, link. go.trainwell.net/howtoadhd to get 14 days free with your own personal trainer. Thank you to my brain advocates and all my Patreon brains for allowing me to quit that job waiting tables and do this full time. And now I can share cool stories like this with you and the community. Like, subscribe, click all the things, and I will see you next video. Bye, brains. Oh, but first, if there is something that has helped you a lot, if there's an accommodation or a strategy or something that's helped you enormously, please put that in the comments below. I think it would be really cool for employers and friends and anyone who cares about an ADHD brain to see what possibilities are out there and what is actually game-changing or can be game-changing for us. In other words, what's your stapler?